Morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. We're live. We're back, baby. It's your boy, Jason. We're talking some football, and today we're chopping it up with none other than the Matty Kiwoom, my trade god brethren till we die, and then some. Always a great time when he's on the show. So excited for today's episode. So go ahead and take out your coffee, the official Wake and Take coffee mug if you've got it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. My man Matty, how you doing?
Well, my friend, we meet again.
It has been a minute. Been a minute. But I'm just so glad to have you on the show. We've seen your camera is upgraded, but you've of course still got the mock draft mania belt behind you and everything else, and nothing's changed. The energy's still gonna be here. We're gonna chop it up in a great way. And I just want to ask you, Matty, how you been?
You know, everyone who plays fantasy football knows, and everyone who does fantasy football content knows that by week 16, you're about done. The brain cramps are in full set. You're like, I lost in my home league, and I'm just like closed for business. I am shutting that door for a few weeks. I need to breathe. So we're all there. Luckily, hopefully, some of your teams are still alive. I was knocked out of the Trade Gods Invitational by none other than Tyler Football.
Dude, his team's a beast.
Yeah, he did. And I traded him pieces that came back to bite me in the arse. One, Jared Goff. Remember we talked about that trade on Trade Gods way back when? Yeah, you know what I ended up getting for that? Najee Harris. Najee didn't do so well for me in the quarterfinals where Jared Goff went for 51 points. So, yeah, I got knocked out.
He ended up with every player in that trade, by the way. For the audience, it was a three-way trade. I gave DK Metcalf. Matty Kiwoom gave Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Tyler Football gave Najee Harris.
I got the 108.
Yeah. Oh, no, I gave Najee to you.
Yes. I had Najee in the 108 because I ended up taking Bowers. Or wherever I got Bowers. So it was Bowers and Najee. Who also, Bowers, we were here last week after going nuclear after a couple weeks ago, comes out with like a 5-burger. Doesn't help your boy out on Monday Night Football. Rough in these streets.
Nothing worse than losing at this time of year, because it just feels like you work so hard and then you don't even get to set your lineup anymore. It sucks, man. It sucks. Luckily, I've still got a few teams alive. All of my underdog teams got eliminated this week. I had a lot of Saquon, Derrick Henry teams, which felt good for a minute there.
Oh, great. I'm sure. For most of the year, I'm sure it felt great.
And that's fantasy football, baby. So anyway, again, as you can already tell, gonna be a good show. So excited to have you on. We'll start with, honestly, a fun little Matty take or just a player that we've talked about a lot together. And actually, you burned the hell out of me with this player, Will Levis. Will Levis has been officially benched for Mason Rudolph. I don't think they've said rest of season like the Falcons have with Penix, but he's benched. Mason Rudolph's going out there. I assume it's going to be rest of season. And I assume it's kind of over for this Will Levis experiment at this point. Is it Mahover for you?
It's so Mahover. Will Levis, all the arm talent, he just hasn't been able to harness it. He plays way too reckless. We've seen just the most hilarious turnovers for him. Despite only playing 11 games on the season, he has the 4th highest amount of danger plays. I think it's over for him. But I don't think this is the last time we hear the name Will Levis. No. If you can move him for a playoff 3rd or 4th, do it. You may end up dropping him by kickoff next year. It's over for him in Tennessee. It's probably over for him for a couple years. But I do see a scenario where we see Will Levis going like that Linsanity run that Josh Dobbs run over the next 2-3 seasons. There's going to be a stretch where we use fab budget on Will Levis. He's got too good of an arm. And if he gets into a system where he can play a little bit more reckless, I mean, the Callahan offense, you could tell they want to operate more in the box, more in rhythm. The way they use Tony Pollard, the way they wanted to use Spears, and just kind of, they're okay trading Hopkins. I think they just wanted to simplify things. They don't want to go out gunsling. He just can't help himself. Kid can't help himself. So now they're going to go to Mason Rudolph it's over for him. Tennessee, it's a good enough spot to bring in a vet next year. Or I don't think they draft anyone in the first, but could Aaron Rodgers be lured to Tennessee? I think someone of that caliber. Kirk Cousins now.
Ryan Tannehill.
Well, Tannehill after a season off. I mean, right now they'd kill for Ryan Tannehill. He was right there. I don't know why I didn't bring him back at some point. Maybe he doesn't want to play. Maybe he wanted to rest. I don't know. But yeah, I think Will Levis now you can forget about him in Dynasty, even Superflex, and just kind of get ready for that day. There will be a week when you're on this show. It might not be in 25, maybe it's 26, where you're like, you got to play Will Levis this week. He's been on a heater. He's thrown 6 touchdowns over his last 4 games, and the da-da-da-da-da. But in terms of concrete value, it's over.
Yeah, I think so too, especially in Tennessee. Although, as I'm thinking about him not being able to harness his arm power, there's a team that sticks out to me that I want to make some moves. They need a quarterback. They actually just moved to the bench their quarterback, and that's the Cleveland Browns. They've seen success with Joe Flacco, a gunslinger who isn't afraid to chuck it, and they've seen success with Jameis Winston, a gunslinger who isn't afraid to chuck it. And if you maybe remove the reins from Will Levis and just let that guy go crazy on an offense like that, it's not going to be great, but it'd be fun for fantasy. And
yeah. We love it in fantasy. It's not going to win Kevin Stefanski any games. Could lose him his job, as we've seen. Just he needs that vet, but it would work for fantasy. We'd like it for fantasy, I think.
So maybe he can end up on a team like that. You burned me, as mentioned. I traded you Matthew Stafford and Cedric Tillman for Will Levis and Ray Davis. This was a couple weeks ago when Will Levis had kind of started to bounce back. He had 4 straight 15-plus point games, wasn't turning it over. Literally traded for him, and then he played the Jaguars. Looked awful last week, and now I think we can put the nail in the coffin. So congratulations to you. You've taken Stafford from me, who, I think I'm one of the biggest Matthew Stafford fans in all of fantasy football.
You're a big Stafford guy. You are.
I'm a huge Stafford guy.
I think it was a timing. It was a timing thing. You had said you were going to go all in. You had some tough losses. I think it was a conversation that came up at a time where you were willing to move on from older players, and you got 2 younger players. It just seems like one will have a job next year, one won't, and it's not the younger guy, unfortunately.
Yeah, not the younger guy. Luckily, I have Penix and JJ McCarthy and Bryce Young. So we've got some young guys in that QB room. Hopefully we can make a little bit of a push, although I made some poor moves. I went old this year, and now I'm out. So that's a lesson to be learned, guys. You might think that you're going to be able to compete. You're going to go get these old guys, and then Deebo Samuel's going to suck, and DeAndre Hopkins going to get traded after being injured, and everything's just going to go wrong for you. But there's always
the price you pay for riding it until the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce owners, you know what I'm talking about.
100%. 100%. But Travis Kelce is probably still wearing that jersey next year, even if he's not scoring fantasy points in it. So at least you have an asset there. We mentioned, of course, in the briefly in this Will Levis discussion, that Michael Penix is now taking over in Atlanta. And I went on yesterday, really 2 nights ago. I recorded after the news because I was out of town yesterday. And I get the move. I get why everyone's excited. I don't know if it's the right move, to be honest. I really don't. And I am just kind of curious to hear the other opinion because, as you know, I was at the draft house with you. I was one of the few people who loved this draft pick. I was very excited about it. When we got Kirk Cousins, I said specifically, I hope we get a Michael Penix or something to sit behind him for the year. But now I'm like, I don't want to see him out there this year. I think, you should have pulled the plug earlier or just not at all, personally. But it is exciting at the very least for fantasy players and those of us who maybe don't have any ties to the Falcons. In this situation, how are you feeling?
The reason why it might make sense for them to do it now, I think, is the landing spot. Homecoming game against the Giants, a team they should beat without needing Penix to play too high level to get too crazy. And then next week, now it's a primetime game in Washington. That's a lot friendlier of a matchup for a quarterback. It'll be the rookie on rookie factor. There's a chance for him to really kind of take off and kind of make a name for himself. And then you get Carolina. It's realistic that Penix could lead this team to 3 straight wins, and whether they make the playoffs or not, you're going in the right direction next year. So I think the landing spot kind of feels like kind of feels soft. I think if maybe you agree with this, if we were at the helm out of the bye, it feels more comfortable. I know there's tougher matchups at the top, but it feels a little bit more like a better spot. But I understand why they maybe wanted to push for the playoffs with Kirk. Fantasy wise, though, I love it. I think it's going to be great for fantasy. I'm not really too worried about Michael Penix and how he can handle an offense.
Yeah.
This offense works, at least for fantasy football. I don't know if it really works for the team, but for us in fantasy, it works. I mean, Darnell Mooney, despite getting a goose egg last week, is a top 25 receiver. Drake London's a top 10 receiver. Bijan Robinson is a top 5 running back. Kyle Pitts still puts a helmet on and gets out there every Sunday or Monday. He really does. He gets out there. But the offense and Zach Robinson and Raheem Morris, it works. So I think this is going to work for Penix. And I think the lesson that I'm going to learn most from this season, we'll talk about more of the players involved in this later in the show. But for me, the lesson was the quarterback-coach relationship, how much that means to the progression of a young quarterback, the evolution of a second or third-year starter. And I still think that this coaching staff is going to work. I think they come from a good coaching tree, a good offensive tree. I just don't. Maybe Kirk Cousins just didn't have it. There was 2 games in which he just lit the world on fire. That was the Buccaneers. Everything else was mediocre to bad. And Penix is going to come in with experience. He played 12 years in college, and he had 2 seasons to finish off at Washington, 4,600 yards, over 30 touchdowns. He's got a great arm. He's got a lot of talented receivers around him. And I think what we're going to see over these next couple of years is the importance of 2 things when projecting quarterbacks early on in their careers: the age and experience coming out of college, and the coaching staff, the situation that those X factors. Because Bo Nix, it's working great that he just came in more mature and knew kind of what to do. He's been way better for a consistent basis than almost anyone in the class other than Daniels. I think Penix is going to fall in line with that. So I like it for Penix. I think now we can start seeing, those weeks where Bijan does well and the receivers do well, as opposed to this is the Bijan week, this is the Mooney week, this is the London week. Kyle Pitts is still playing, guys. He's still out there in those games too. But I think this could elevate the overall games here. We could have some fun Falcons games to finish off the season.
Did you accept my invite just to shit on Kyle Pitts?
You know what? The thing is, you die as a hero, you live long enough to become the villain, because I'm out there, Kyle Pitts is who he is, but I'm still trying to grab as many Kyle Pitts shares as humanly possible. If I can get them for free 99, they're for me. The problem is they're still not free. They're still not free.
It's the funniest asset. I don't actually hope this, but I think it'd be really funny if he just continues his entire career getting like 600 yards and 2 touchdowns, like no matter what. And it's just always, his price never goes down. Next year's always the year. He'll be 30 and it's like, oh, he's finally got the old man strength. He's going to go out there and break tackles finally.
Yeah. There'll be a year. He might be 32, but there'll be a season where we go, this is it. I told you.
Oh, it's so frustrating. I mean, I do think it'll be exciting. I just kind of wish we would have seen Kirk Cousins end the year. Especially to me, the timing, like, he just finally won a game. He just finally got his first touchdown pass in weeks. I feel like the amount of money you're paying him, you should be allowed to go through a slump. Not that it's good that he went through a slump, but you should give him the chance to come out of it. And I understand that he's back there not looking great.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're 7-7. The Buccaneers are winning the division anyway. I just kind of want to let Kirk Cousins finish the year, let Michael Penix soak this stuff up, because I'm worried that he's going to get injured. That would just be like the most Atlanta Falcons thing for him to go out there and get sacked by Kayvon Thibodeau and the season be over. Like it's just.
And you have Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and then we get Kirk Cousins again.
You have Kirk Cousins.
So it just feels like literally the most Atlanta Falcons thing to waste this amount of money on Kirk Cousins for it to go really well, for it to be like, oh my God, we're undefeated in the division until you lose to the Saints, of course. We're going to make the playoffs. Kirk Cousins is breaking franchise records. And then it all comes crashing down, and now we're pulling the plug and throwing in the rookie, who people were kind of, thinking should have been a second-round pick, made fun of the pick that it was a top 10. I don't know. Again, like I said yesterday, guys, I'm excited to be proven wrong. I hope this goes well. I'm just not sure. I want to see it first, and maybe that's just the Falcons lens I have and not I'm not looking fantasy enough. Because, I mean, I know he's going to go out there and spin it. That's the one thing we talked about on Trade Gods is that this kid, not kid, he's my age. This guy can spin it.
This man.
This man.
He can spin it. And now he's got the home game. You know, he has a relatively healthy offensive weaponry. I am at quarterback 20 this week in my weekly rankings, but because I think you can run the ball a lot, and I think that they will. Yeah. But I'm also ready for a 4-touchdown game. Like, I think that's on the table.
Man, I mean, I'll say a lot of the Falcons, Commanders, best ball teams that are all now eliminated, I definitely didn't expect Michael Penix to be at the quarterback for this potential shootout. Not at this time, but yeah, I will ask you this. Are you comfortable enough starting the receivers this week? I know it's a softer matchup against the Giants, but are you going to take the wait and see approach given it's such an important matchup this week? Or are you just throwing Drake London out there?
I'm definitely playing London. I'm a bit tepid. I do him at wide receiver 28 because the Giants actually do have a sneaky good secondary in fantasy. They don't give up a ton of fantasy points to opposing receivers. So I'm not excited to play either one of these receivers. If I can make other arrangements, I will, but I still have Drake London in the wide receiver 2 flex range.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. And I am feeling Bijan Robinson, hopefully, right? Like,
oh yeah, my running back won this week.
Yeah.
I think he has a monster week.
I love that. I love that call because, yeah, I mean, that's generally what we see with rookies, especially their first start. They're going to ease him in. It's a softer matchup. They're not going to have him go out there, throw the ball 40 times. Unless they might. They might, especially if the game gets out of hand. But for the most part, I'm definitely expecting handing the ball off to Bijan Robinson, maybe opening up the play action, simple play packages, stuff like that, which should, yeah, to your point, benefit Drake London, right? The wide receiver 1, those plays are probably more so going to be designed for him. I'll be keeping my eyes on Kyle Pitts. If Kyle Pitts can go out there and get 4 catches in Michael Penix's first start, you already know what Twitter's going to do. And it should be exciting. Lastly, kind of big news. We talk about Will Levis being Mahover, but Patrick Mahomes just can't quit. We're still not sure what's going to happen with his game day status, but it's seeming like he's going to play through a high ankle sprain yet again. We've seen this before from him. He gets it done. Now, of course, that was the Super Bowl where, you know, he really has to get it done. This would be a regular season game against the Texans and then a Christmas Day game. But you're in the fantasy playoffs. He struggled all year. Are you relying on him if he does play, or are you going to look elsewhere?
I'm definitely looking elsewhere in my 1 QB. Superflex, I'd have to see the roster because I do have him as a QB 2 this week. But for my 1 QB seasonal guys out there, like if you're deciding between Bo Nix and Pat Mahomes, go Nix tonight. I'd play Nix. I'd play Darnold over him. I know he hasn't played great, but I'm playing Kyler Murray in the juicy matchup over Mahomes. So I'm not really playing it, but it's really a compound of multiple factors. It's just the ankle plus the fact that he's averaged about 18 fantasy points in your 6-point per passing leagues for 2 years now. Yeah. He's been around QB 10, QB 12 over that span. It hasn't been what we were growing accustomed to with Mahomes. So I would look elsewhere.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there for sure. I would say most quarterbacks, I might, honestly, this is going to sound crazy coming from my mouth, I might start Michael Penix over Patrick Mahomes this week. Maybe.
I think I would make you could make the argument quite easily that the upside favors Penix over Mahomes. And I think maybe even the floor is probably pretty similar. The thing about Mahomes and the thing about the Chiefs that we've had to deal with all season is the fact that they don't care about these games right now. They have a 2-game lead over the Bills right now for the number 1 seed. They have a 3-peat on the mind. And I do think they could beat the Texans with Carson Wentz. So he might go through a week full of full practices. And on Saturday morning, they go, you know what? Let's go Wentz. Let's be careful because we have 2 games in hand. If we lose this game, we reevaluate for Christmas against the Steelers. But if they beat the Texans, I wouldn't play them against the Steelers either. So I don't think that we should be relying on Mahomes in your shallow seasonal leagues and you're really trying to, squeeze out wins in the playoffs. I do think he is droppable in your 1 QB seasonal leagues, that if there is a Baker Mayfield or Jordan Love who's been iffy, Darnold, like I mentioned, if those guys are out there in your shallow 1 QBs, yeah, I'm okay making the swap.
That's fair. I do want to shout out one of my friends, my good friend Rob. He's in my home league. He had his 2 quarterbacks in our super flex. He was so happy going into the season. Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes. Poor guy. Traded for Nick Chubb this season. Just had David Montgomery get injured. It's been really rough for him. He still made the playoffs. Fun fact, he's gotten second place in our home league every single season, and it's looking like he's trending for another second overall finish. Patrick Mahomes, man.
I love the fight, though. You got to keep fighting for those. It's not easy to win championships.
No, it's not.
Got to fight.
Awesome stuff. Well, we have some more topics that we're going to get into today. But before we do get into those, going to play a little bit of an ad break here. And why don't we just hear about... We'll just do Player Profiler.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. And one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on PlayerProfiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks. Our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
Yeah, if you're looking for that final push, that final tool to help you take down that championship, you can get the Player Profiler All-In package right now for $25. Doing a little bit of a holiday sale with promo code SANTA. That'll give you every single thing available at Player Profiler, the data analysis, the Dynasty Deluxe, the you name it, the DFS Dominator. You know, it's an awesome tool. Highly recommend that. Use promo code SANTA to get the All-In package. Matty Kiwoom, Jason Allwine back with Wake and Take. I've got some questions for you, Matty.
Fire away.
Season, we're kind of wrapping up here. And I do think that at this point, we could definitely award a couple players. So I want to ask you, who was the most surprising player to you this season?
There's a few. This has been a very surprising season.
Yes.
A lot, and I would say in the positive way. Very positive, surprising that has happened. But for me, it's Devon Achane. Devon Achane has surprised the shit out of me. He's been in 14 games. He's played almost every game this season, and he's been uber productive. And not only has he been healthy, we've already seen him now go 60% over his snaps from last year, or his rush attempts from last year. It's not like they're just handling him in certain packages and just kind of rolling him out there sparsely to keep him healthy. No, they were like, all right, we're just going to throw him the ball 10 times a game. Okay. He's going to be one of the most targeted running backs in the NFL, second highest target share. He's going to run a shitload of routes, over 250 routes run. We're just going to give him the ball. We're just going to give him the ball a ton and see what happens. And he's stayed healthy. It's been completely surprising. And I'm happy. And I see in the chat, Brian Thomas Jr. Thomas Jr. is another one that's been ultra surprising for me.
Really? I mean, those are both great options. I mean, I think you could say Brock Bowers. Yeah, I didn't expect this type of domination as early as he did. Kyren Williams keeping a stranglehold on that backfield, I think, has been pretty impressive. And really, I mean, I didn't expect Bo Nix to be this good. I did have the take that all the rookie quarterbacks from the first round would hit. Didn't expect him to be this good. In offensive rookie of the year contention, pretty impressive stuff. Bucky Irving. I mean, really, Chase Brown, I see in the chat, been a very fun.
Chase Brown's been very positively surprising. Yes.
So it's been awesome. It really has been awesome. Love a lot of those players. Love the Devon Achane call because not many people expected him to stay healthy, myself included. We were taking a lot of Jalen Wright, and I have a lot of Jalen Wright just sitting there, just waiting. And then the one time Devon Achane did get hurt was right before the bye week. He picked up that concussion or a small ankle injury. It was something very minor and was able to be good after the bye week. So we've just not really had that opportunity, which is good, right? Devon Achane, a stud. I do want to ask you, has he done enough to put himself in that Bijan Gibbs range? Or is he slightly right behind still?
What? No, he won't because of the size. I'm still not trading. I'm not playing the roller coaster ride of Devon Achane because once you jump in up here is when the injury will happen. I still believe it's tough for a player of that size to stay healthy over the course of time. I don't imagine I'll ever really have much Devon Achane. I have him in a seasonal league where he fell to me in the 4th round, and I'm super pumped that I have him.
Yeah.
And I would have probably tried trading for him if I didn't in seasonal, but in Dynasty, I'm not looking to pay that price. The price to get in on Devon Achane shares right now are beyond what we thought they'd be in terms of price, and I'm not shopping in those aisles. If I'm going to pay that price, I'd pay the extra 15% and get me Bijan. I'd stay in that range and maybe get Gibbs or Breece Hall at a little bit of a discount. So, no, I'm not really buying into it, but I'm buying in that I'm happy he's having a good year.
Fair. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Yeah, I don't know if I would sell him. I don't know what I would be comfortable adding to get to Bijan. Maybe a second. I don't know. Well, that's a conversation for another day.
We can't help it. We can't help talk trade stuff. I mean, come on. What do you want to do?
We've got surprises. We had some disappointments, lots of disappointments. I'm not going to let you say Christian McCaffrey. Who's disappointed you?
I have 2, and I couldn't break the tie, so I'm going to talk about them both.
All right.
The first one is Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison has been a complete disappointment, and I'm not going to toot my own horn because I did not think he'd be this bad. I was just taking Malik over him. And part of me felt like there was bust in his profile. I just never had I could never say it because I didn't truly believe it. The guy is wildly talented. Yeah. He's a freak of nature. He checks all the boxes. But there was always just something in my gut that said I didn't want to have a lot of Marvin Harrison. And I have basically 0 shares of Marvin Harrison throughout my dynasty profiles, my redraft leagues, because I wasn't paying a back end of the 1st, early 2nd to get Marvin Harrison in seasonal. And I was not going Marvin Harrison at the 101. In Superflex, I wasn't using I was using 5 picks before I got to him. So I was not getting a lot of Marvin.
Yeah.
And what I just find very disappointing is even though he has 7 touchdowns, like with 7 touchdowns, you would expect him to have a big season.
Yeah.
It's just not there. And he has no true trademark moments, games where you're just like, that's Marv. I know he has the 3 touchdown game. But there's been only 200-yard games. It just, I don't know if there's been that moment where it's like, oh, he's here and he's fantastic. And that's very disappointing for me. Having said that, I'm not buying. The price hasn't come down. But do I think he's a bust in overall? No. He's a bust in 2024. I don't think he's a bust in 20. I'm not going to put the chips back in the basket. He's a bust in 25. He's just too talented. It's just weird to me. This guy with this profile, having 7 touchdowns, having almost 100 targets, is wide receiver 41 on a points per game basis. Very disappointing. But I would say, it might be that Trey McBride is just awesome too. That when push comes to shove, he's good. But the thing is, when you watch the games, being the man is undeniable. Like Malik Neighbors, if Malik Neighbors on Arizona, you think he would not get targeted? The guy he has 140 targets already. Like Malik Neighbors, I know is in a different offense, but he's always open and he's always gonna be the first look, even if he was on the Cardinals. It's a bit surprising for me that when McBride's on the field, he's clearly number 1 option. Clearly. Yeah.
That's what Kyler Murray posted. I don't know if you saw his Instagram post, but he basically said there are 3 things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and 85's going to be open. And that says a lot. When you have those tight ends, right, that like becomes your quarterback's favorite target, it's just a beautiful thing. It really is just a beautiful thing. And so I do really quickly, make sure you guys get your Ben Sinnott's. Get your Ben Sinnott shares, the Senator, because this is looking like a similar situation. I don't think he'll have the ceiling that McBride does, but, held back by Zach Ertz, pretty good in college, decent enough draft capital, athletic, good route runner. I think he could be fun on that offense over time. Because if you'll remember, Trey McBride was dropped in a lot of leagues 2 years ago last year, and has bounced back in a big way. Very possible that we see something for maybe Ben Simmons or something.
Trey McBride's value tanked so badly that I traded him away for Richie James because Richie James had a good camp with the Chiefs. This was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was one of the worst trades I've ever made. And it was made it went in the chat. Nobody clowned it. No one gave a shit. Everyone's like, oh, who cares? 2 bums for 2 bums. Well, now one's a dynasty tight end too. And one guy is playing for the Toronto Argonauts, I believe.
Oh my God, is he on the Argonauts?
I don't know. That's just like the stock. I don't know where he is.
Wake up, champs.
I don't know. But the other guy that I'm disappointed with, and I think I'm even more disappointed with this player, is Caleb Williams. And we've seen flashes.
Yes.
But what I find to be the most disappointing is that 2 horrible red flags, the doomsday scenario red flags have been planted, and they've already shown their ugly head. One is the Bears franchise, this pattern of never matching a quarterback with a coach always lends to a coach having to inherit a quarterback, which lends to a digression in terms of skill set and in development. And it's just back on that pattern. Ryan Pace is not going to be fired. They're going to bring in a coach. If he doesn't have success, Pace will be fired. They'll bring someone in, fire the head coach, and by then they'll be in the sweepstakes for Arch Manning. I don't want to. That's awful to see. My guy Frank Amarante, he tweeted out, "Is Caleb Williams the next iteration of Trevor Lawrence?" And I was like, shit, maybe, because Trevor Lawrence was. I did not believe that he would be just an afterthought in terms of the hierarchy of quarterbacks in this league, being passed over by the likes of Bo Nix and maybe soon to be Michael Penix.
Yeah.
And the second red flag is the makeup. We were all nervous. Like, man, the scene of him crying with his mom on the sideline, it was like, man, that doesn't look like the leader of an NFL quarterback, NFL team. And it was like, no, he is. You heard the reports. He's a great guy. He went out to dinner with the team, and he's got it. And you watch Hard Knocks, like, yo, this kid's got it. And now it's like he's lasted almost all year being a good sport, trying his hardest. But we're starting to see like some doubt creep in. We're seeing the Cam Newton meme of him melting down on the bench. It's just not – I don't know if you can bounce back from – I hope so. But it's going to take the right hire at coach, the right offensive coordinator to be brought in, and I don't trust the Bears. So right now, keep trade cut, has him at quarterback 10. Let's just say optimistically he is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence never had a season over better than QB 12. Not terrible, not great. So that gives us a sell window. So in Dynasty, I'm looking to sell. I'm looking to, tear down to a Trevor Lawrence and get an additional asset. It just seems like he is now on the trajectory of his ceiling being 12, 13, 14 on a yearly basis when we've seen other rookies take off already. And then you have guys like Drake May, Michael Penix. They are going to take – and no one is losing hope in those quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy is going to be right on the ride next year. And all of a sudden, you could see – Caleb come back and lower down. So I'm looking to sell right now. I'm very disappointed in year 1.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll pat myself on the back there. That was one player that I very much recommended selling before the season. I just didn't like his cost. I felt that you could get Jaden Daniels plus and be happy. You could get Bo Nix plus and be happy. Drake May plus and be happy. I don't think that Caleb Williams is going to bust. I think I do have a little bit more faith in this franchise figuring it out. Hopefully, right, they get Ben Johnson. I think that would be very exciting and save everyone the trouble of, being worried. But maybe not. Like, maybe he is very loyal to the Lions and wouldn't want to stay in division. Who really knows? But I think that they'll figure it out because I do believe in Rome Odunze. I unfortunately believe in DeAndre Swift. And while I don't think that Caleb Williams' value is right, I still think he's a good enough quarterback. And this really should have been more so what we expected. I mean, at the college level, he struggled against ranked opponents pretty much every time. And so to see him struggle now, especially with Shane Waldron, I mean, like, what was that hire? What was that?
That's the Bears. That is the Bears. That's what the Bears do. That's what they've done. Talk to anyone who's been a diehard Bears. Talk to Seth, our guy Seth. He's been a Bears fan for a long time. He'll tell you they're just seeing the same movie again right now.
Yeah. God. I hope he figures it out. I do like him, and I think he has a lot of the good skills. I mean, like we said, we've seen the flashes. That Lions game on Thanksgiving was really cool to fight back and almost win that game. Just a bad play call and bad clock management by Eberfluth, whatever. Like, I just never got that. I never understood how you're going to move on from Justin Fields and keep the coach. You should have burnt it all down. And so hopefully they have realized that. They've kind of already started doing that. And next year they can build in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, at quarterback 10, I mean, you're talking about Justin Herbert behind him. You mentioned J.J. McCarthy. I mean, think about that. Right now, if you're out, which you probably are if you had Caleb Williams, you could get J.J. McCarthy in a first probably. And who's to say that J.J. McCarthy doesn't outscore Caleb Williams rest of the time? I mean, we're seeing Sam Darnold ball out in Minnesota. We've seen every quarterback ball out in Minnesota. So I think that there's still, like you said, I think there's still a selling opportunity here, even with the disappointment. And I like that call. Some other disappointments in the chat. We've got Deshaun Watson, of course.
Yeah, of course.
CJ Stroud. I think that might be my biggest disappointment when I'm thinking about it, because I was very much, I was one of those losers that put CJ Stroud as dynasty quarterback 1 too early. Poor there. And Travis Etienne, another good one from MV Prof. Definitely a really poor season from him, which does show Kendre Miller as well. Tank Bigsby, Kendre Miller, why you can't give up on rookie running backs that don't break out year one. You still need to get Trey Benson. You still need to get Ray Davis, Blake Corum, all these guys. You never really know what happens in year 2. So very surprising, very disappointing season. Great takes from you, Matty. Let's move on. Let's start looking ahead. Big week, semifinals. If you could give us any player that you would start or sit this week, who would you do?
So for me, this guy's starting to play better, but I think he is still kind of a cautionary start sit. And in the fantasy semis, I'm saying definitely start Sam Laporta. Don't be afraid about starting Sam Laporta. I have met tight end 8 this week. And now over the last 5 games, actually, to be honest, last 6 of 7, he's had 6 or more targets, 17 over his last 2 games. We saw the 7 catch, 111-yard performance last week. It wasn't a bit of a catch-up mode, so a little bit nervous there. But the Bears are coming into town this week, or they're going to Chicago, and it's a top 10 matchup, for the Bears are against tight ends. They're tougher against wide receivers, which could funnel more targets going to Sam Laporta. And at this rate, at this point of the year, a guy with this talent, a guy who's on this much of a heater, I'm just going back to the well, and I feel like you could bank on double digits, of course, with super upside if he catches a touchdown or 2. No longer do we have to worry about trick plays for Laporta to get the ball. That was a miserable time. Huh, Jason? Wasn't that a miserable time of fantasy when you had to be like, do I play Sam Laporta? I don't know. Is Sam Laporta going to get a touchdown because Penix Sewell threw it to him or a double pass to him? It was awful times, and I think we're past that. And that's why Sam Laporta is a top 10 play, top 8 play for me going into the fantasy semis.
I like that. I actually picked up Sam Laporta in the Guillotine League that we were both a part of. Shout out STLP. And I'm starting him this week over Brock Bowers and TJ Hawkinson, at least for now. I might go back on that Brock Bowers one, but I like the matchup. He scored 2 touchdowns against Chicago already this season. Granted, he only had 6 yards with 2 touchdowns, which is kind of crazy. But TJ Hawkinson had 100 yards against the Bears too. So I think that this is, like you said, a very solid matchup. It's going to be tough on JMO, which should lead some targets to Laporta, especially without David Montgomery. I know that obviously that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get a lot of touches, but they might use him a little bit less as a pass catcher maybe. I don't know. I think that either way, I like Sam Laporta this week. I do think that he's bounced back in a big way and where it really does count. I know he really, really hurt a lot of teams to get here, but now you can finally rely on him. And really this Lions offense is losing last week does kind of put them in a tough bind as they're tied with the Vikings. Now, host of the game plan. You do a great job over there. I know you used to do the dumpster diving, the garbage. What was it called?
The bargain bin.
The bargain bin. And I was just curious if you had any streaming recommendations this week.
So a streamer here, this player, It's a bit of a lofty one, but that's what we're doing here, throwing fastballs. Wan'Dale Robinson. You have to do your homework. You're going to have to do your homework. He was limited in practice, but it seems like he's going to play. So I'm going to play Wan'Dale Robinson. So over the last 2 weeks, 2 red zone targets, 20 overall targets.
Yeah.
And that's come with 5 different quarterbacks. It looks like Drew Lock this week is going to play. The matchup, we love the matchup against the Falcons. We love the matchup, especially coming out of the slot. He plays in the slot a lot. So Wan'Dale Robinson for me is a sneaky play. I created this metric. I call it the Cuck score, cornerbacks under constant chaos. It's a matchup metric where you're trying to exploit the better receivers against the worst cornerbacks based on catch rates, fantasy points allowed, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wan'Dale Robinson is in the threshold here where we're thinking he has a better chance to out-project or outscore his sleeper projections. And with his projection this week being right around 10 points in most scoring platforms,
yeah,
I think we see a game here where he gets that 15, 20 fantasy points. And that's kind of the sleeper value that I think you're going to get from a Wan'Dale Robinson. So he's probably my streamer flex play of the week.
Yeah, I love that. The Falcons get gashed by the flex all year because AJ Terrell is pretty good on the outside versus that de facto number 1. Now, luckily for Neighbors, he's going to move around enough. That's not going to be all game. But yeah, I like that call a lot. That's actually the one I was going to recommend. But
that's funny. Simpatico.
Yeah. Just how it is. Matty Kiwoom, Jason Allwine, we're talking. We're just going to be on the same page. It's just how it goes.
That's just how it is.
It's just how it is. Cool. Teams that are still alive. Is there any move that you would recommend them to make right now? Whether it be a buy, a sell, or just an idea, a strategy. What would you say to them?
So I'll give 2. One, if you did not have a trade deadline, which if you play in Dynasty, you should not have a trade deadline. Trading is the most fun. In it, who cares? It's like the one thing you could do in fantasy that actually helps your team is try to be active in trade. So don't show up the trade deadline. And if there hasn't been a deadline in your league, make the move for one of the Tampa Bay guys. And I'm okay paying up for Bucky Irving or trying to get Rachaad White. The matchups over the next 2 weeks, it's the best. There will never be a better closeout to the season schedule wise. The Panthers, the Cowboys, the 2 worst teams against running backs with a bullet. They are the softest matchups for running backs. They get destroyed by running backs every single week. And the Buccaneers play both of them back to back.
Yeah.
So whatever you have to do to land, whether it be trade, I doubt they're available in your shallow seasonal leagues. But if you can trade for one of these running backs, both of these running backs, either, it doesn't matter. I want one. I want both of them. The other move that I would highly recommend making if I'm a contender is making sure Kenny Gainwell's on my roster.
Okay.
He's been getting more and more touches because obviously they're trying to keep Barkley healthy. They're looking like the best team in football. They have Super Bowl aspirations. And if Barkley sustains any bit of an injury, whether it be a precautionary or he's actually going to miss a week or two. Next week in the fantasy championship, the Eagles get the Cowboys. And I just mentioned the Cowboys are one of the worst matchups against running backs. Getting Gainwell, no matter the format, if you could pick him up, pick him up. If you have to trade for him for nothing, trade for him for nothing. He may not ever make your lineup, but if anything happens to Barkley, and I'm not hoping it does, or even if they decide to rest, then all of a sudden Kenny Gainwell has tremendous upside. And we've seen him now play a little bit more over these last few weeks. So contenders get Gainwell just in case. Because again, inversely, if you don't get him, your opponent may get him, may have more fab, higher waiver priority, whatever. Put him on the back end of your roster now. Don't worry about the Gus Edwards. You can obviously drop Sincere McCormick's on the IR now. If you've been holding on to Kimani Vidal and seasonal, drop all those guys. Any of those guys. Make sure Gainwell's on that bench just in case he has a big role next week against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of just goes to what you really should be doing in general is just get those backup running backs on your bench if you're contending. Like, what are you really going to stand to gain from like a Brandon Cooks off the waiver wire right now? Like, go get those guys just in case. Yep. I love the Gainwell call. And maybe even Will Shipley. It's possible that he, maybe has the Ray Davis thing where Ty Johnson was kind of the running back too in Buffalo. But then when Cook went down, it was all Ray Davis. We don't know. It's probably going to be Gainwell. This coaching staff loves him, and he's the one getting all the touches right now. So I think that that's a very fun handcuff. Any of them. Just get those handcuffs on your team if you're contending. You have no idea what's going to happen this week. And in the championship, you do not want to play against Tim Hightower. That's just the worst. So, yeah, go ahead and just try to get ahead of it. Use those bench spots. What about rebuilders?
The rebuilders right now, obviously, you want to get picks.
Yeah.
If you're rebuilding, I would recommend two things at the running back position, especially. Now, in general, I am all for adding young, high upside receivers when you're rebuilding. It's always a good bet year to year. But that costs you. If you want to jump into a little JSN, good luck. But at running back, I am selling for anything all of my what I'm going to call fringe starters. I'm selling my Rico Dowdles. Yeah. I'm selling Aaron Joneses. I'm selling Brian Robinson. I'm selling all of these guys because there's so many running backs that are coming into the league next year that I just think there's going to be a lot of jobs that are taken over or at least impacted in a negative way. And then on top of that, like, do we really think every year the running back's just going to be healthy? The most volatile position in the history of this game all of a sudden became predictable, just ironclad. No running backs really got hurt except for McCaffrey. It's like we sacrificed McCaffrey so the entirety of the running back position could stay intact. And I'm not betting on that year to year. Yeah. The other move I'm making if I'm a rebuilder and this is a very nuanced move. This only happens in certain leagues. I'm looking at the Chase Brown team. And if the Chase Brown team is not a playoff team, I'm buying Chase Brown. Chase Brown looks like next year's Kyren Williams, meaning they might bring in a third-round running back. This guy has been so good for the Panthers. There's no way that they're going to completely make him irrelevant next year. I don't care what running back they take, where they take him. So if you could pry Chase Brown away from that team, I'm doing that on my rebuilders because I think what you're going to get is you're going to have to pay running back 2-ish prices, and you're going to get a top 8 running back going into next year because I learned my lesson this year with Kyren. Corum was as perfect of a match as you could get. Yeah, he looks when he's out there, he literally looks like Kyren Williams. I don't know who's who sometimes. Like 23, is that a 2? Is that like Corum with the carry? All right, that was Corum. Got it. And he wasn't able to even make a dent, even a slight little dent in Kyren Williams. I think we see that next year with the Bengals and Chase Brown. So if I'm rebuilding and Chase Brown's not being utilized, being valued in the moment, he's being valued in the future, I'm buying him. And the other one, Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet has shown me enough that if Kenneth Walker is not going to be a healthy running back every year, and he hasn't been, then I'm always going to want Charbonnet on my roster because he's been a workhorse when called upon. And he's, again, a guy you can get at running back 2 or 3 prices if that team's not in the championship or in the semis, and you can put him on your team and might have a game breaker going into next year.
I hate Zach Charbonnet. I'm Zach Charbonnet's number 1 hater because I'm a huge Kenneth Walker fan. But I think it makes sense. I might wait to buy Zach Charbonnet, and hopefully Kenneth Walker comes back this week. But yeah, I mean, I think that, like I said, backup running backs are just incredible, especially ones that have proven that they have juice and can play when they get the job. That's so important. And so you could probably right now buy Kenneth Walker cheap and then go buy Zach Charbonnet and have that backfield for really, probably for a decent bit of the future. I don't think the Seahawks are really going to be in a situation where they can kind of affect that running back room in any way over the next couple seasons. They're probably going to be looking at quarterback very soon. Defense is kind of struggling outside of the secondary, so there's just a lot of holes on that team to where I don't think they're really worried about replacing Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker anytime soon. So those are some great moves. I will go ahead and say also, just anyone injured, if you could just try to get him. Brandon Ayuk, JJ McCarthy, as we talked about earlier. Really just those guys. Stephon Diggs, I think, could be interesting, even if you're rebuilding, because I think he's going to come back and play next year and be fine. And I think his age kind of negatively affects his value as well on top of the injury. Any injured player, just get them on your team. And yeah, use that discount while you can, because I mean, the second the season's over, that player's no longer injured anymore. We don't really care. You know, it's 2020.
And we're so close to that. We're so close to that.
So close. The injury discount is barely even there right now, but it's still kind of there, and take advantage while you can. So we have made it to the final take. Matty, give us our hot take.
My hot take rest of season is, of course, the fantasy world has turned their attention to Jahmyr Gibbs. Yes. What does Jahmyr Gibbs look like now with no David Montgomery? Surely he is going to be a difference maker, and of course he will be. But for me, the running back one over these next 2 weeks and will go down as a fantasy football legend. I just mentioned a minute ago, Chase Brown will be the running back one over these next 2 games. It's not a matchup thing. It's a usage thing. We've seen Barkley now have, last week he was running back 30, the week before running back 17. We've seen Bijan fall out of the top 15 on a weekly basis. We saw, Derrick Henry fall off last week and really not give much, only 6 fantasy points. Not Chase Brown. And it doesn't matter who he goes up against. It doesn't matter if it's the Chargers, running back 8. The Steelers, running back 9. Tennessee, running back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the last 6 games, Jason, Chase Brown has gone for 100 yards from scrimmage. In the game he didn't, 94 yards from scrimmage and scored a tutty, caught 9 passes. Yeah. He's been so consistently nasty, so consistently good for this team that I going forward, he's got the Browns this week, the Broncos next week. Don't care. Chase Brown, running back 1 over these next 2 weeks, cementing himself as a fantasy football legend for his 2024 performance.
That was like, I feel like I ask for hot takes all the time, and I mean, we get them, but like, I feel like that's a true, that's a hot take right there. Like that was a good one. Like that was not only good, concise, reasonable, but hot too. I mean, you brought Jahmyr Gibbs into it. Everyone's new favorite league winner. Bijan Robinson's an option with the new rookie quarterback, but no, Chase Brown. And it makes sense, right? I think that's a really fun take. I like that a lot. Sounds like you need to get him on your team before the next 2 weeks. Man, that's a fun one. Really good take.
Disclaimer, do not trade your Bijan Robinson and your Jahmyr Gibbs to get Brown. Don't do that.
No.
Unless you can get something substantial on top of it, but I doubt it. But
Jamar Chase and Chase Brown.
Give me your Bengals. Done.
Cool, man. Well, as always, it is just such a pleasure chopping it up with you. Guys, if you like Matty Kiwoom, you can find his content wherever he's about to tell you.
So let's start at the tippy top, the X app at Matty Kiwoom. I'm on there all the time. You can find me at South Harmon, southharmonff.com. Become a member of the Warp Worshipper. That's going to give access to our Warp tool, or you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/South Harmon, and you can get access to our rankings, our articles, our metrics, all that good stuff. And then, of course, if you're watch a Player Pro, check out South Harmon on YouTube. Check out our podcast, wherever you get podcasts. We got stuff coming out. So, yeah, you can find me over at South Harmon, wherever South Harmon is posting our shit.
Let's go. Make sure you follow Matty Kiwoom. His Twitter handle is down in the chat. Just that, Matty Kiwoom. Awesome stuff, man. We'll chop it up again soon. And you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. Audience, you also have a terrific day. Good luck tonight if you have any Chargers Broncos in your semifinals. Maybe make a fun little DFS lineup if you don't. It's the season is ending. Use this time to take in all the DFS, the underdog picks, the fast draft. Just juice that thing because it's almost over, guys. The season is closing soon. So have a fantastic day, a wonderful rest of your week, and tune in tomorrow for some more Wake and Take. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.